it was definitely a moment where I was like, it's so
Not
good.
a body experience.
Was that the movie, or was that your unhealthy lifestyle catching up to you?
That's not heart attack. It was
I like how I'm criticizing you, but me and Gio both we bought our own pint of Haagen-Dazs last night and we ate it in one sitting.
I regret
like
nothing.
fucking animals.
And then y'all left your trash in my car.
We left one tiny piece of trash.
It sat overnight. It had ice cream on it.
It wasn't that much ice cream. It was like a sliver.
It was like the top,
Just
the plastic peel top.
It wasn't that much.
Well, the real problem with this is that I didn't know what it was until I picked it up. And I had peeled ice cream all over my fingers, and it was just...
It's probably caramel peanut butter.
The worst part is I didn't get to taste it. So I had the worst of it. Well, actually, y'all had the worst of it last night.
All right, guys. So you're watching the Cinema Schmucks. Off to a great start. Already flubbing the intro. All right. Today we got patient zero, Giovanni. You're going. So Gio's sick, guys, but he's gonna be a trooper and make it through the podcast.
I'm trying.
We got the dirtiest man alive, Zachary Gooch. Gross.
What did he do?
You already sexually assaulted our audience.
Oh,
Y'all better get used to it.
And then you got me, your host, Miguel Rubiera. So if this is the first time you're tuning into the Cinema Schmucks, the basic premise is we got three different perspectives. We got the noob,
yes.
we got the somewhere in between, and we got the movie snob. So the goal is to bring you guys a varied perspective on each movie we review, and hopefully you can pick which one you relate to, and we find somebody that represents your thought process. So today we're reviewing. What are we reviewing, guys?
The Last Jedi.
Very controversial movie, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Definitely. Has split the Star Wars fan base
Yeah.
in half, right down
Yeah,
the middle.
Tragically. It's mostly split with the fans who saw the first three movies.
The very small number of fans that saw the first three Star Wars movies. That tiny demographic of people.
Hey, all right. It has value, like a little bit. But yeah, and then we have people now that are really...
It's the people that
enjoy
want to
the
let the
different
past die and the people that don't.
Yeah. You can apply that, definitely.
Yeah. So the Star Wars fan base has been split in half, kind of like General Hodo split the Imperial fleet in half, or the New Order, First Order fleet in half.
It was like
kind of
60-40.
on
It was 60-40.
It was a great shot.
Yeah. Okay, so general thoughts on the movie. Just quick summary.
Okay. When I first watched the movie, I actually saw it 3 times just because I felt like it needed to be seen to really understand everything. And when I was watching it, it was great. I felt like maybe a third of the way or midway, but then past the midpoint of the movie, certain elements felt kind of very, for lack of a better term, Disney.
So I watched it twice. But so the first time that I watched it, I really didn't like it. And at that point I'd kind of heard the mixed reviews, so I was prepared to kind of to look for things that were wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the second time I actually enjoyed it a lot more, I think, because I wasn't looking for things to be wrong. I was just watching it purely for entertainment purposes. There were a couple parts in it where it did kind of snap me back into certain scenes where it seemed out of place. So it made me think what was the point of that? But I think overall I liked it.
All right. I find that my opinion kind of aligns pretty much with Gooch. The first time I saw it, I knew very little about the movie going into it intentionally, right? I'd only seen some of the trailers. I avoided pretty much everything I could on the movie, and I was very negative initially. I was split because there was a lot of negative stuff, but there was also a lot of good in the movie. I just didn't know how to feel. And so I think that comes from the fact that the movie doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie initially. Yeah. It has a very different tone. It's in general, I would say it's darker, except for the couple very out of place Disney type jokes in it. I would also say it's kind of claustrophobic. It's not this story that's affecting the entire galaxy. It's compared to the other movies. It's a very small scale story, very character driven. So it just didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. And I think because of that, when I first saw it, I was kind of confused and conflicted about it because I had expectations that weren't being met, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't being met in a bad way. Now, the second time I saw the movie, because I was prepared for what it was going to be, I knew it was different. I knew that the tone didn't quite align with the other movies. I enjoyed it a lot more. I enjoyed it because I strongly think it's a very well made film. Definitely. Now I think the debate is whether it's a good Star Wars film. And I think that's will be hotly contested for many years to come. I mentioned that I think it's a very character-driven movie. What do you guys think about the characters?
I think some of the new characters seemed very flat. Like obviously there were some really good characters. The one general, what was her name?
Hodor.
Kamikaze.
Hodor.
Hodor.
There's not.
Hold the door.
She did a little more than hold the door.
Yeah, seriously.
Goddamn.
Decimated a fleet.
Good stuff. Like she seemed kind of one-dimensional at first, but obviously she kind of fleshed out.
Yeah.
All over the shit.
Jesus.
But yeah, I definitely enjoyed that.
It's like Hydra.
The character with Finn. What is Rose. I don't know how I feel about her character, just because I think it would have been fine if we didn't have the pretext of a Star Wars film, like you were saying. But as it was developing, I thought it was fine. But in one larger scene near the end, that kind of threw me off a little bit.
You're talking about the kiss when she saves Finn.
I don't think that was wrong. I think they just did it poorly.
Fair enough.
Like how it was timed. I was fine with their relationship, but I wasn't crazy about it.
I didn't actually like their relationship. I thought that it kind of threw in like an unnecessary love triangle. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't like the kiss. I did appreciate where they were trying to go with that scene in particular, especially because I think, and you see this mostly with in the dynamic between Rey, Snoke, Kylo, and Luke. The movie is very the core concept that it's trying to explore and whatnot is balance, I feel. And I really like how she says that line that she says, you know, whether you think it's cheesy or not, she says something to the effect of, that's how we're going to win, not by fighting the things we hate, but by saving the things we love. And then it cuts to Kylo ordering the entire First Order fleet to fire on Luke, allowing the rebels to flee and escape. So it's
focusing more on what he hates rather than what he's fighting for.
Exactly.
But I felt like that was the problem. I was fine with the back and forth between Kylo trying to bring Rey to the dark side and Rey for Kylo to the light side, and I didn't love it, but I was enjoying the dynamic because it felt like it was something different in a certain sense, because it felt like it was almost a love between them. It was strange. That's how I depicted it anyways. But when they're in the red room,
The throne room.
the throne room,
the red room.
the
It was
red
right
room,
at the end.
it's filled with blood.
It's red the whole way.
Yeah.
The entire movie. So it's
Anyway,
always red.
the throne room.
There's no blood. Just lightsabers cauterize wounds.
Yeah. So you were saying
We'll cut that bit out.
in the throne room, the fight scene was great. I really enjoyed that, but the back and forth between Kylo and Rey had me split because, yeah, I didn't have, because I wasn't totally against Kylo coming to the light side, but it felt like someone just pulled the mat out from under me. Like they built all this tension up, and it felt like it was going in that direction, and then they just stopped it, and Kylo orders the soldiers on her and the entire base. So I felt like that was a cop out. That kind of like ruined it for me just a little bit.
What did you guys think of Luke's characterization in this movie? Because that's a big point of contention for people that didn't like this movie.
But what do you think people didn't like about it? Because I'll speak on it later, but I enjoyed his depiction.
So Luke's a very complex character in this movie, and a lot of people are saying that after his arc in the original trilogy and the way he ends, you know, he relinquishes, you know, he throws his lightsaber away, he allows himself to die, he becomes a Jedi in that instance. People say that he's like, it's not, this take isn't representative of that character anymore. It's like he did a 180, like he reversed all the progress that he made, and especially with the flashback where Luke and Rey and Kylo Ren both tell Rey what happened between them. Definitely. And it's a callback, or maybe not even a callback, but I think it takes inspiration from an Akira Kurosawa movie called Rashomon. I'm butchering that pronunciation. The premise of the movie is that 4 people tell the story of how a man and his wife get brutally murdered from different perspectives. And so I thought that was a really interesting way of explaining how broken Luke's character is, and, you know, all the things that he's gone through. And honestly, I don't think that this take is misrepresentative. Luke's always felt the pull of the dark side, and I don't think just because he overcame it in that instance on the Death Star and the Jedi, I don't think just because he overcame. Yeah, it's like you never just get rid of your problems.
Yeah, definitely.
You can overcome them, but
you're
always
to deal with how it feels.
Exactly. So you're always gonna struggle with problems. You can get better at it and whatnot, but, you know, people relapse, all these things. it's fine. I 100% believe that Luke's character, especially after like the way he explains it, like reading Kylo's future and seeing like all of the damage that he could potentially do, and for Luke in that moment, it felt like he definitely was gonna do it. Why Luke would instinctively ignited his lightsaber, and he immediately afterwards felt shame.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting take on that character for sure.
Yeah, because I was originally when Rey was trying to pull the information out from Luke, and he's very secluded for so long that he's not willing to divulge that information just to some girl out in the universe, and until he finds out eventually who she.
Shameful.
Exactly. So,
And you find out that when so during one of their like Force connection sessions, Kylo tells his side of the story, and in that version, Luke basically has like yellow Sith eyes almost. Yeah. He's like he has hate in his face, and he's going to kill Kylo, like he's there to murder him. I just think it's very interesting, like the perspective how two different people can remember and perceive a situation. Definitely. And how it affects them.
And that kind of connects, and we can talk about this later, but it kind of connects with when Kylo and Rey saw the future when they were in that hut. But like they both saw the future, and they both saw very different branches. Like they both saw the other turning away from whatever side they were on. And that kind of is the same thing. Like two people can see something and take very different things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like the idea of if you were to see the future and you're terrified of it for some reason, in which Rey and Kylo both were, because they were on opposite sides of the spectrum. It's like the idea that you're so terrified of something, you do everything in your power to make sure that might not happen, even though I feel like that just contradicted what you guys said. But I like my point, so we'll leave it there.
I don't know what your point was.
As in, like, I don't know if you've ever seen in movies, like in usually cartoon movies, where there's like a shaman or like a witch or something. She tells like
what kind of cartoons are you watching?
These are like old movies, like Disney movies. I don't remember the exact.
That's fine.
Someone in the audience will figure it out.
Where they show them their future, where maybe a protagonist is gonna turn evil or something, and he's trying to do everything in his power to make sure that doesn't happen. Like, kind of like Anakin.
Oh, you're talking about like a self-fulfilling prophecy type thing.
Yes, thank you.
I got you.
Haven't been in philosophy in a while.
Psychology.
You learn in philosophy.
Falafel.
Falafel.
We just eat falafels.
Falafels.
The study
It's
of falafels.
falafel.
I've never had a falafel. Are they good?
What?
Isn't it just? It's just like a. It's
like Sprouts.
What?
I'm confused.
I thought it was a Muslim taco.
Yeah, but it's got like Sprouts in it.
What do you? I was about to say.
I feel like sprouts are the least important part of that, though. Like, like someone asks, "Hey, what's a taco?" And you're like, "Oh, it's lettuce. Like, it's got lettuce in it." It's like lettuce is the least important part of a taco.
Yeah, where's
it
the
was
meat?
the most
Is it goat?
striking part because I've never had Sprouts before.
Who wants to have?
So
Sprouts?
I was like, "Oh shit, this has Sprouts in it." It's a
like
Middle Eastern taco,
basically. Yeah. Is that offensive?
I really hope it isn't.
We're now on ISIS's like kill list. But anyways, back to Star Wars.
We lost track. How do we go on that tangent?
Falafels, man. It's just they'll always derail a conversation.
I don't know why you said falafel and I thought of crepes.
Crepes are good, dude.
I heard they were good.
So in regards to Luke's character, because I never got to get my take on it.
I don't want you to give your take on it. I don't care. We're moving on.
Next
Gooch.
one.
No, I'm kidding.
But when Luke was fighting Darth Vader back in the original trilogy,
The Arranged Tridge.
yeah,
That
he
sounds
threw
a lot
away
better.
his lightsaber. Originally, he was fighting him, even though he had sworn to never, like he sworn to not kill his father when he found him. In the moment of the battle, Darth Vader kind of pulled out the darkness in him, and they fought. But when it came down to the moment where it would have mattered, Luke kind of realized what he was doing and like threw away his saber and was like, paraphrasing, but like whatever's gonna happen, you're gonna have to kill me so that I can die a Jedi. And that goes back to exactly what happened in the Last Jedi. Is that like even when Luke's Force apparition, whatever you want to call it, when he was facing off Kylo Ren, he never raised his saber to strike Kylo. Like it was always like it was out, but it was never fighting. It was more like the original sense of lightsabers. If one of the books that Disney published was The Jedi Path, which is basically
It's not canon anymore.
It is canon.
It's not.
Is it not?
No. You wasted that money.
I bought like gold.
Oh my god.
It was like 2 or
you.
3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
Dang.
canon anymore.
That's tragic.
Well, in there, it was saying that this is
Yeah,
not even for the podcast anymore.
please tell us information that no longer matters.
This isn't like part of the podcast, but just the lightsaber was originally meant as a defensive weapon.
I see the point you're trying to make. I do agree with the point.
But you're wrong.
Yes. I feel like I do need to bring up the fact that he also didn't raise his lightsaber because the lightsaber would have just gone through the real one.
Also, it didn't
because
exist
it was a
anymore
ghost.
because they
Yeah.
ripped it apart like
Yeah.
earlier.
It did not sit. What that voice crack?
That's what make that's
Are you okay?
no.
And now the camera has water all over it.
That's for effects. It's a mixture of my sickness and that delicious ice cream.
Did you really get spit on just now, dude? Gee, what's wrong with you?
I'm dying.
Also,
Are you drowning in your own saliva? Because that's what it seems like.
Feeling self-conscious now. I'll just talk like this.
Or just don't talk. Then everybody wins.
I don't really feel like it. You right?
So what were some of y'all's favorite parts in the movie?
My favorite part was when they were on Crate, and it was just more of like from a visual standpoint. The salt that could have been.
Yeah, like what was that?
What was he thinking?
He's an idiot.
We actually talked about that in one of my classes.
Nobody cares about your classes, man. We're doing the podcast.
You're right. When I saw the fight scene like begin with all the rebels being ready and they're just firing away, and obviously when they hit the salt, I just thought it was so beautiful when it just comes bursting out the contrast of the red and the white. I just thought that was really beautiful.
Sure.
One of my favorite parts was the moment that the fleet was torn apart.
Yeah.
Like that
By-
was almost orgasmic.
By
Like,
General
watching that.
Hodor.
Yeah.
Hodor.
It was like just
If you
seeing it in the
listen
silence that happened.
If you listen really closely, right?
You could hear bodies.
No, you can hear very faintly. Hodor. I want a supercut of like this Hodor's face just plastered over hers.
And then the ships.
That was like
I thought you
honestly,
said
like
the
the audience fell silent in the theater.
Oh yeah,
It was a very powerful moment.
For sure.
Like,
it was what? How did you describe it?
powerful.
No, before that.
Oh, orgasmic.
So one of my favorite parts was definitely the fight in the throne room. It felt very reminiscent, obviously intentionally, of the final conflict in Return of the Jedi, which I feel neutral about. Whatever. Some people like the callback, some people don't. But I really like how Snoke was until he was brutally murdered. I like how Snoke was represented in this movie. I feel like Snoke is what Yoda and Sidious should have been in the prequel films, in that he's not like some amazing like super physical duelist who's gonna beat you to death with a lightsaber. He's like just so powerful with the Force. Like when Rey tries to snag the lightsaber from it and he just whips it around and like hits her in the back of the head with it. Like I love that. So I really like that whole scene. And then the fight was just like orgasmic.
It was everything
Like
we
it was
wanted.
great. I think it's the best fight in Star Wars so far, to be honest, because it's not like, although the prequel trilogy, like the choreography is beautiful and it's very like, I think it's too choreographed. It doesn't feel real enough, like it feels almost like dancing.
There's no raw.
Exactly.
power.
Yeah. In this fight there was raw power.
It was great.
Yeah. I like how Snoke was killed. Not just the fact that he was killed, I like the way it was done. They went out of their way to show like there's like a close up, like his tongue sticking out. There were basically X's over his eyes. Like they went out of his way to show he is
never
very
coming
dead.
back.
That's one of the things that I liked was not just them like convert like this man's dead, but also that like he was like no matter how powerful he was in life, he was mortal. Like he was just as undignified in death as the rest of us would be. So I like that.
Fair enough. You nihilistic fuck.
We will all die.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought it was great. Overall, I thought it's not your typical Star Wars film. It's new, it's daring, it's different. It falters in some points. It's not perfect by any means, but it's definitely very interesting, and I'm glad that they decided to take it in a new direction.
Yeah, I definitely think that it was more of like Disney kind of showing the fan base like like not being disrespectful to obviously the people that have loved the franchise their entire life, but like this is Disney's in charge now. Like they're gonna do with the story what they will, and like literally they said that in the movie. Like sometimes you have to let the past die, or at least move forward. So.
Oh, I have nothing to say.
Good.
Getting some soup when I get home.
Some chicken noodle soup.
Yeah. The Puerto Rican style.
What does that mean?
It's better.
But what is it?
There's more water.
Yeah, there's All right, guys. So thanks for joining us. Catch us back here next week. We don't know what movie we're gonna be doing yet. So
If you have any thoughts and opinions,
Let us know in the comments down below.
to our 5 viewers, you're much appreciated.
I just felt people unsubscribe.